are out in Phoenix, Arizona, hanging out with Nerissa. Thanks for having us out. Super love your bike. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you. You know, what do you do outside of riding this beautiful bike?
Well, I definitely spend a lot of time riding it. So other things I do outside of that. Well, I'll start off just basically who I am. As you mentioned, my name is Nerissa. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Just moved to Arizona 2 months ago. So I'm still fresh to this beautiful warm weather, but I'm loving it.
You moved just in time to avoid all the snow, right?
Yeah, exactly. If I was still in Wisconsin, this baby would be tucked away already for the season. So I'm really loving the fact that I still have it out on the road. I'm pretty sure all my friends back home are kind of sick of seeing my posts of me riding it up all the mountains here, but I can't help it. I'm just so excited. Just moved here from Milwaukee, moved here for my job actually. So I'm an engineer for Harley Davidson. I've worked for the company for about 8 years now. I've always worked in product development, in specifically powertrain development. Okay. So when I first joined the company around 2015, I was a design engineer, and I was actually part of the team that helped deliver the Milwaukee 8 powertrain. And since then, I've moved on, and now I'm in engine calibration and emissions. So I primarily oversee our Softail platform for the engine calibration and working with like the regulatory agencies to make sure it's meeting all the emission standards and all that kind of stuff.
Very cool. Yeah. So how did you get into engineering? That's, you know, probably a little bit of a unique field, I feel like, for women. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, race cars, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was really young, my mom took me to Road America, which is a pretty famous road course in Wisconsin. And there was some open wheel racing, like Indy cars kind of, we went to go see. And I don't know, just the second that I saw the cars on the track and I heard the engines and we walked through the pits and I got to see them up close, I was just like mind blown. I loved it so much. I just felt like I couldn't get enough of it. So that's when I was like maybe 12 or 13 years old. And I started following racing really closely. Like I would wake up at crazy hours just to watch the Formula One race on the other side of the world. I was just like obsessed, you know, for like this little girl. It was kind of like a weird thing, but my mom was awesome with it, and you know, took me to all the races that I wanted to go to growing up. So that was great. And like just through that, I realized that I had a really big interest in mechanical things and just really like performance and specifically the engine. I just kept on like being drawn to the power plant of these vehicles. Mm-hmm. So actually, when I decided to go to school for engineering, I thought that I wanted to work in professional racing, and that was kind of always my goal. And you know, all throughout college, I was kind of like tailoring my projects towards that, and got out of college, landed a job at a different company in Wisconsin, still doing engine development. Yep. And I started actually working with a small professional race team on the side, just like a voluntary type thing. They let me shadow their engineers. I got to travel all over the U.S. with them and like be right in the pits with them to kind of understand just like the basic mechanics of a race team and running a professional race car and all this stuff. So that was really, really awesome. But like through that experience, I kind of realized that there were maybe like aspects of it or certain skills required for that job that I didn't really love or I didn't align with. So it was great to get that experience because it was fun, but it was also really like telling for me. It made me realize that I wanted to be like not necessarily track side, but more in the upfront development of things. So like back in more of a traditional engineering office.
Yeah. So not fixing problems as they come up during a race, but being the one to...
Yeah. Okay. Like kind of design, develop, do the research and all that kind of stuff. That pushed me, again, like I said, back into engine development and design, which is just something that has always been so interesting to me. So I ended up getting a job at Harley in 2015, shortly after that. And I already rode motorcycles before joining Harley.
Okay, I was gonna ask you which one came first, the job or the bike?
I did ride before Harley, but it was super casual. I had a Ninja 500 that I bought off Craigslist. It was a total piece of junk. I didn't know any better at the time. I mainly bought it because it was purple, because that's my favorite color. But yeah, then once I joined Harley, most of my coworkers were riders, and it's hard not to just like get sucked into the culture when you're right there in the midst of it all. So I think that's when like my passion really exploded, and I really understood like the culture of riding and just like totally immersing myself in it.
Okay, so it sounds like you had a great opportunity when you were growing up to kind of get, or I guess not growing up, you said it was during college, to get close to those racing teams and kind of get that behind the scenes feel. I know when you were in Milwaukee, you did a lot of work trying to expose younger girls to different aspects of motorcycling. So what's that been like, and what kind of brought you into that?
Sure, yeah. So when I was going through college, pursuing an engineering degree, I was one of 6 females in my graduating class of like 200 people. Obviously, being a female in engineering is kind of a rare thing. We're a minority in that way. So I was already kind of like used to being one of the few females, and I developed my schooling and my career just knowing that. And I think like those of us that have gone through that path, like those of us being females in engineering, we understand that there aren't many of us, and we kind of need to stick together and support each other in that way, because it's tough to be a minority in that way. So I feel like I had a lot of phenomenal female mentors throughout college and the early years of my career. And as I progressed further in my career, I just felt like I wanted to continue that. It was like, like my turn to pass the torch, kind of. So in 2018, I decided to join a program in Milwaukee. It's called Build Moto. It's a totally nonprofit, volunteer-based organization that's been around for a few years now in Milwaukee. And the whole goal of the program was to expose high school kids to motorcycles, but do it in a way that teaches them really valuable skill sets like, basic mechanics or fabrication. There's just like so many aspects that go into this program. It's really great because I think everyone knows that getting kids into the trades is becoming more and more difficult, but those are really important roles, and we need people in those fields. So this program was like developed to help with that. And in 2018, I joined it as a volunteer, as a mentor, and decided to start the first all-female team. Okay. So myself and a few other women around Harley and just other engineers around the area that either were riders or familiar with motorcycles, we started a high school all-girls team, and it's called Iron Angels. I'm super, super proud of it. And the whole premise is that we got a motorcycle in January. It was like a barn find, didn't run, who knows what condition it was in. Yeah. And then we had 6 months to completely rebuild it and turn it into a race bike. So throughout that 6 months, the students completely tore it apart, redesigned it, rebuilt it. We had a budget that we had to maintain. We had to maintain a social media account. We got judged on all these things. And then the accumulation at the end was the actual race against the other teams. Yeah. So it's a really, really great program. And it was really cool for me to be in that position to like help mentor these girls who, some of them had never held a tool before. Like they didn't know righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, like the very basics, right? So yeah, it's a great program. I'm really proud to have been a part of it. I was really sad to leave it, moving to Arizona.
You're always trying to start something here too.
Yeah, maybe someday. I would love that. I definitely realize that I have a passion for teaching, through that program, and especially teaching people who may not have had these opportunities growing up that some others have had, and maybe they feel like disadvantaged in some way, and they're like nervous to step into the game, because motorcycling is for everybody.
Yeah, well, and I think it's great too because you would have been teaching them other skills as well. You mentioned budgets, so working within your budget and kind of whether it's living within your means or applying that to something else in the future. It sounds like you taught them a lot of different things, whether it's practical or conceptual.
Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of life skills that came out of that program. One of my favorite stories is a girl from our first year team. She was really into mountain biking.
Okay.
She would do races just for fun kind of thing. And if she'd crash and something broke on her bicycle, she would go to her dad and say, "Dad, can you fix this thing for me?" And after she was with us for a season rebuilding the motorcycle, and she learned how to use the tools and all the basics and everything like that, her dad told us at the end of the season that instead of him fixing her bicycle, now she just goes straight to the garage, grabs the tools, and does it herself. And I thought that was so cool. Just, a little thing that's so practical, but like so momentous because she couldn't do it before. But now she has the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence.
Yeah,
and like,
absolutely.
Who knows how much further that's going to go someday for her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what color was y'all's bike that you made? Purple?
No, if I had my way. So every year we started with a brand new bike, and we've built 3 bikes so far. And every year was a totally different color scheme. So we really left it up to the girls to design it because we wanted them to feel like total ownership of the design. And when we did that, it came up with some creative ideas for sure. The first year was a checkerboard theme, but it was teal and red.
Okay.
The second year, they really wanted pinstriping on the bike. So I had a friend in Milwaukee who was great. He came in and showed them how to pinstripe and then helped them actually do the tank. So that was black and pink. And my favorite part about that bike was that the swing arm was sparkly. I don't know what it was about the swing arm, but the girls really wanted it to be sparkly, so that was great. And then the last bike we built was actually inspired by one of the girls' pet birds.
Okay.
It was kind of a tropical bird, so the tank had sort of a scale pattern and then a rainbow theme. Like the paint faded it with different rainbow colors, and it turned out really, really cool.
That sounds complicated to paint.
Yeah.
And the girls did that?
They didn't do all of it.
Okay.
So they designed it. We had a local company who sponsored the project, or our bike. We brought the girls there to see the whole process. They tried their hand at painting just to kind of like learn it and see what it would be like to actually be a painter. And they had some design consultations with the painters, and then ultimately the professionals did the tank and they brought it back to us. So the girls were involved like through the whole process. They didn't do like the physical painting on that particular one. But yeah, it turned out really, really cool. So it's fun just to kind of give them the reins on the design because, high school kids probably have some crazy ideas that like we might not be brave enough to put on our own bikes, but so.
And it's a fun project too. You might get a couple of people that have completely different tastes and just get some wild stuff. So
for sure. Yeah. The year that we had a black and pink bike, half the team really wanted pink on the bike and the other half did not. So that was a really interesting kind of social situation that we as mentors had to work through with the girls because, some of them felt that having pink on the bike was just too feminine, we already stood out because we were the only all girls team. Yeah. We didn't want to be over the top with the pink. But some of the other girls were like, well, yeah, we should own it. We're the only all girls team. We should definitely have hot pink on the bike. So like a cool aspect as a mentor being on that team was not only teaching them like how to physically work on the bike, but it was also like teaching them how to be a team and more of like the social aspect of all of that and like respecting each other, listening to others' opinions, coming to conclusions and making decisions together, maybe compromising some things. And I think like especially women or girls, in these minority type fields, whether it be engineering or even just riding motorcycles, sometimes we are a little intimidated to like speak up and have a voice. So by giving them this safe space, it was awesome to just see their thoughts and their ideas like totally flourish and just like result in an awesome bike.
It was probably really rewarding too at the end to like see their, sense of accomplishment from building this bike from scratch.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's always a really, really good feeling. Like come race day, when they're all lined up along the fence, watching what they built out on the racetrack, you can tell that they're so proud, and it's a really cool moment.
Okay, last question about this, and then we'll talk about something else. But was there anything, you started this girls team, was there anything or any point during that first year where you're like, what have I gotten myself into? I don't know how to do this or that on the bike. Or did you feel like your engineering background and just experiences you were good to go?
There were definitely moments that were stressful. The team was typically anywhere from 6 to 8 girls. And because we were an all-female team, that meant that we pulled students from lots of different high schools around the area, whereas a lot of the other teams, their entire team was within one school. Okay. So like maybe a lot of the students already kind of knew each other. Yeah. Our team, everybody was fresh. And like high school is kind of an awkward age, especially as girls. So it wasn't so much in the beginning of like teaching them the bike and how to use tools. Like that's very black and white. This is how you do this. But dealing with like, getting them to gel as a team and to like not be shy around each other, that was really tough at first. The other aspects of the project, like I mentioned, we had to have the social media account, we had to maintain the budgets, all of that. That's stuff that like I don't deal with on a daily basis in my personal job. So I definitely felt a little over my head in that aspect, but we learned from it, and we ended up bringing on some other mentors, some other women from the community who like specialize in those things, or maybe they have a job in it. But they also ride motorcycles, so they were like kind of connected that way. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and I think over time we grew and figured out what worked and what didn't work, and ultimately like it was totally about the team. Like each of us mentors, we had something that we were really knowledgeable about and things that we weren't knowledgeable about, but we did a really good job of kind of like passing it off and just like helping each other that way. So I'm really, really thankful for like all the other mentors that I've worked with, because it's been an awesome experience. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. It sounds like something that would be great to just have in every city, so that all girls can have the opportunity and the exposure to motorcycles. Yeah. I think that would be awesome to have this program grow. And like I said, it's been around Milwaukee for something like 10 or 11 years, maybe longer. And I know that they've had plans to scale it and maybe bring it to other cities, but it takes a lot of people and a lot of volunteer hours to pull off something like that. Yeah. And it's tough to find people like willing to put that time in, but for a good cause, who knows, maybe it'll grow someday. Yeah. I hope. Okay, so changing gears a little bit. So you're an engineer who works at Harley, you give back to your community. Let's talk a little bit more about you riding your bike. So because you've done a lot of trips, right? What do you think has been the coolest trip, or the one that you always, comes to your mind first when you think about like, oh, this trip that I did this one time? Oh, it's hard to pick just one. Okay, pick 2. I might pick 3 if that's okay. Yeah. Okay, so one trip that really stands out to me is in 2020. I rode from Milwaukee to West Virginia, and I didn't go straight there. I dropped south, and I met up with some women that I knew in Memphis. And we all met up there and then continued east up into West Virginia. And that was like my first big long distance trip. And I didn't know if I could do it. I just kind of approached it like I approach a lot of things, which is like, I'll figure it out. Like, it'll be fine. But yeah, I only knew 2 of the women that were part of that group. Everyone else I had never met before, never spoken to them before. And it was just such an awesome experience because, like, it being my first long distance trip, I learned a lot about what I was capable of, what my bike was capable of. I learned a lot from the other women who were more experienced in doing long distance travel. For example, like, I just had all of my stuff bungee strapped to my back seat, and I had like my blanket in a garbage bag just in case it rained. I mean, I didn't have like any nice packing gear, any of this stuff, right? But I think we all really gelled really well during that trip. Like, especially when you meet up with a group of riders that you don't know, like sometimes you just don't always gel with the other riders. You have a different style of riding or whatever it may be. But I think it was like 8 of us maybe. We just like clicked, and we just like bombed across Tennessee and up into West Virginia, and it was just such a cool experience. And I don't know, I left it feeling like, yeah, I can do this. I can totally do long distance trips. You know, like I like gained a lot of confidence from it. You know, so that was a really memorable trip for me. I'll say another.
So did you guys camp out when you got to where you were going? Okay.
Yeah, it was like a small all women's camp out. It was called Grits and Glory.
Okay.
Near Seneca Rocks, which is beautiful. But it rains there a lot.
I think, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I was thinking about going, and I knew a couple of women that did go, and they said it rained the entire time. like miserable type rain. So in 2021, I went back and I met up with a friend. We rode there, just the two of us, from Milwaukee, and we hit some rain. It was like just past Hocking Hills in like southeastern Ohio. Every single time I've ridden through that area, I've hit in rain. And it's been like 4 or 5 times now. And people tell me that it's normally beautiful. And I'm like, I don't believe you, because it's always raining when but on that particular trip, I remember the type of rain where I was like praying to whatever deity could hear me through my helmet. I was like, just please let me get through this and stop raining. Because I mean, you're up in the mountains and it's just thick, dense rain, and it was so miserable. I'm sure there's a lot of fog too. And
a lot of fog. Yeah, but we made it through, and afterwards we were just like so energized and we felt awesome. But yeah, I don't want to do it again. That was one trip. In 2019, my husband and I flew to northern Thailand and did a motorcycle trip there for a week. We rode around northern Thailand. Cool. And that was my first time riding in a different country. Yeah. And that will like forever stand out to me as one of my favorite trips and favorite adventures.
Was there anything during that trip that you're like, this is just so weird, we don't do this back in the US? Like, I mean, I've heard like in some, Asian countries, you see all the videos where like bikes and people are just going everywhere and no one ever crashes into each other, and it always blows my mind.
So we were kind of joking the whole time we were there that like there's no rules in Thailand. I mean, obviously there's rules, but not like here on the road. Yeah. So first of all, they drive on the other side of the road compared to the US. Yep. So that took a little getting used to at first. And you can kind of do what you want to a certain degree, like filtering between cars in the cities or passing. Like you can basically pass at any point in time. You don't have to wait for like a double yellow or dotted line or anything like that. So I felt like I had a lot more freedom there as a rider, which was really cool. And it definitely got crazy for a bit. Like the videos, it was so many people. Yeah. But it was interesting because I felt like when you were there in the traffic, everybody had a really good sense of like spatial awareness. So you weren't as afraid of being hit by a car as like what I often feel like here. Okay. So like it's crazy, but it's kind of like a controlled crazy. Yeah. You know? Yeah. That was definitely different and a little wild, but it was fun. And the roads there are just like stunning. They're so curvy and elevation changes. I felt like I was living in a postcard for a week straight. It was so pretty. Did you guys
take your bikes with you, or did you rent when you got there?
We rented. Yeah, there's actually an organization there that does tours. It was like a guided tour kind of thing. So we rented through them.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. So that was really awesome. And then my last most favorite trip is just the recent one. My husband and I just rode our motorcycles from Milwaukee to Phoenix as part of our process of moving here. And along the way, we actually went through Wyoming and we did the Devilstone Run. So that was this past August. And that was really, really awesome. It was my first time in Wyoming. Beautiful state.
Yeah, I've never been, but Ben's been. The photos he got are awesome.
Yeah, I felt like the scenery and the landscape changed every day. So that was cool. It was my first time camping in a national park. It was my first time camping with bears nearby.
Did you see any?
No, thankfully, but I was scared. I won't deny it. I was scared. Yeah, so that was just a really memorable trip because it was kind of like our grand adventure west, moving our lives and everything that we knew in Milwaukee and then just like starting to come out west to the desert.
So there are probably not many people that can say that they moved and like rode a motorcycle as part of the move. So that's pretty impressive.
Thanks.
But, in addition to that, and then your other trips, how did you get into doing trips on your bike versus just, a little, 100-mile ride around your house? Not that there's anything wrong with that because you got to start somewhere. But
absolutely. Yeah. I think it was just all in the name of adventure. I love traveling, and obviously my favorite way to travel and see the world is on two wheels. And I wanted to branch out and just like keep having that feeling that I had riding around my city. And I just wanted to like see more of the world. So I had a couple girlfriends who did long distance travel like regularly. And they like had it down. They had the packing, they had the gear, they had like all the tips and tricks and everything. So I think I kind of looked up to them and just tried to like soak in everything that they would maybe like post about on Instagram, or maybe if I saw them in person, I'd ask them questions, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of jumped in. Like I said, that one trip, that first trip out to West Virginia, I really didn't know what I was doing. The first leg of my trip from Milwaukee to Memphis, I was by myself. I hit really, really severe weather, actually. I had to pull over and take shelter for a bit, and it was 2020. It was, during hard COVID, a lot of things were closed. Like I couldn't even find a Starbucks to go sit and chill out in. So I ended up finding a cheap hotel room and renting it for like literally 4 hours just while the storm passed. So, I don't know. I think I really like that feeling of pushing your boundaries and seeing like how far you can really go as a person, and then learning to overcome that. Because I think that's a really fantastic way to grow, mentally, physically, whatever it is. And for me, long distance riding like really embodied that. It was something that I didn't know if I could do, but I knew I would have to figure out the problems that I would run into. And, like you just kind of like learn and you keep going, and you have this like sort of grit and determination. And I don't know, you do it enough, eventually you just kind of like figure it out. Yeah. And then it's like not a big deal to ride a couple 100 miles in a day, I guess.
So is there one thing that you figured out you should always take with you on a trip just in case you run into any of those issues?
I have a lot of things. Well, first of all, I'm an engineer, so I'm like very particular about a lot of things, just naturally. But my left side saddlebag is always stocked with like very important tools or things that I might need along the road. So I always have chapstick. I always have sunscreen. I always have, on long distance trips, I'll take a jump pack for the battery. And I have a portable tire pump, air pump. It's good to have, I'm blanking on the name. If you get a nail in your tire, like a patch for your tire, something like that. I typically have a small first aid kit with me. It's something I actually want to upgrade because what I have now is pretty simple, but just to have like some type of wrap or Band-Aid, something like that. I always have snacks.
Gotta have snacks.
Gotta have snacks. So I have a bag up on my handlebars, and I love putting sour gummy worms in there.
Okay.
Because, I mean, if you're on the road for like a 200-mile stretch, you can get kind of bored. So it helps to have a little helmet snack.
I saw your speaker on your bars too. I thought that was pretty clever. Is that, I assume that's for camp outs and things so that you have it?
Yeah. If I'm doing like under 40 miles an hour, you can hear it. So like,
okay.
You know, sometimes if I feel like rolling through town being like a bad bitch, I'm like, you know, like blaring my music. But no, it's mainly just like a storage solution. So I have a Bluetooth speaker with me when I'm camping.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, wait, is that a speaker? It is.
Yep. Yeah. I love having really functional things on my motorcycle, but also making it look cool. So like the functional things don't stand out or look really nerdy. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely one of them. Yeah.
So you mentioned challenging yourself and kind of pushing your limits. So does that mean, do you already have your next long distance trip in mind? Do you have a goal or something that you're trying to do in the next year? That's
a good question. I feel like I want to do so many trips. It's hard to pick one. So I definitely want to ride in more countries. That's maybe not something that I plan on doing in the next year. But like over time, eventually, I would love to ride in more places throughout the world, just to see like different scenery and meet different people. And, you know, like the cool thing about motorcycles is you don't even have to speak the same language, but motorcycles are the catalyst to building relationships, right? Like everyone who rides kind of has like the same language in a way. Mm-hmm. So like going to a foreign country and then finding people who ride is just super awesome to me. So that's definitely a goal of mine. Yeah, I have so many bucket list rides. It's hard to like pick one and say what I'm gonna do next year. Yeah, I feel like it's probably one of those things that, you know, just along with just traveling in general, there's always so many places that you want to go, and it's finding the time because of those pesky 9-to-5s. Right. Yeah. No, it's okay. But I mean, that's another reason I'm really grateful to live in Arizona now, because our riding season here is so much longer than Wisconsin. I'm sorry to my friends in Wisconsin who might be watching this. I know they're already jealous of me and moving here and keeping the bike out. Are you going to miss ice riding though? Because you did a little bit of ice riding up in Milwaukee, right? I am definitely going to miss ice riding. That's obviously something we can't do in Arizona. So, I sold my ice tires and my setup and everything before I moved here. And it's such an awesome sport. And the community of people who ice ride, at least around Wisconsin, such a good community of people. Everyone is just like stoked to be out there, stoked to be on motorcycles in the middle of winter. Right, and not be frozen. Yeah. And, you know, it really, like, it kept us sane during the long winter months. Like, we put away the street bikes, but then the ice bikes come out. So at least we're still riding. Yeah. And it's, like, such a fun, crazy, wild thing. Like, you have these moments where you're just, you know, out there on the ice having so much fun, and they stop, and you're like, I'm literally on a frozen lake right now. I was going to say, I would be pretty nervous. You know, either, obviously, ice is slippery, you know, I'm probably going to go down, right? I mean, yeah. And then what if something happens with the ice? I mean, I don't know. It seems very cool, but I would be a little nervous. It's definitely a weird experience. Like when you start to think about it, you're like, I'm riding motorcycles on a frozen lake right now. Like, what am I doing? Yeah. But no, I mean, there's certain like, you know, guidelines, like you don't go on the ice unless it's so many inches thick. And, you know, in cold climates like Wisconsin, it does get pretty thick. So it's safe. I promise it's safe. But no, it's cool. And like, yeah, you definitely crash. But when you crash on the ice, a lot of times you just kind of like slide away from your motorcycle and it's like not that big of a deal. So yeah, I don't know, kind of fun. It's almost like I don't know, like sledding sort of, but kind of. Yeah, kind of. So I'm really going to miss ice riding, and I really miss my friends who are part of that community.
Yeah.
But you know, I get to like watch them on social media and kind of like live vicariously through them that way. So it's fine.
Yeah. And now you've got more dirt riding probably that you can do out here in the desert.
Yeah. Yep. I'm really excited to get into the dirt riding out here. Back in Wisconsin, there really wasn't a lot of open, like public land for riding. You kind of had to like know somebody that had land who would let you ride on it, that kind of thing. Yeah. Unless you felt like traveling for like hours, you know, to go somewhere. So here, it's just so accessible. Like, I don't know, you have to ride dirt out here, I feel like, because it's just everywhere and there's like so many opportunities for it. So definitely plan on getting into that.
All right, so let's get into your actual bike a little bit.
Sure.
Does your bike have a name?
It doesn't. I feel like it should, but I'm just so indecisive. I can't decide. I think at this point I've decided it's a female.
Okay.
But that's as far as I've gotten.
She's beautiful.
Thank you.
Does she have a theme song?
Oh, I feel like if it had a theme song, it would have to be something by Cher.
Okay.
Just because of like how colorful and like bright and glamorous it kind of is.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that paint, because that's pretty cool. I don't know if you guys can see the paint, but
yeah, so it's almost like a chameleon kind of paint. It's a sparkle throughout, and it's a rainbow sparkle. So depending on where you're looking at what angle, you see different shades of the rainbow. And most of it's powder coated. So the tank, the fenders, and the side covers, those are all powder coated. And basically how it happened was I went to a friend's shop in Milwaukee who does powder coating. I actually went there with the Iron Angels.
Okay.
And he was another sponsor for the team, so he was teaching the girls how to powder coat. And he had a sample of his paint in his shop, and I saw it, and I was just like, I gotta have it. So the next thing you know, I'm in my shop, totally disassembling my bike, and brought him all the tins, and came back, and I love it so much. I mean, it's a little over the top, but it's unique, you know, it's mine, and no one else has a bike like it now. So did that, and then I got the fairing and the hand guards and had those color matched because they're plastic. So the painter did a really good job color matching that. And yeah, like here out in the Arizona sun, it just pops, and I love it so much. Really nice. Thanks. So it really kind of started with that, and then I like to stalk other people's builds on like Facebook and Instagram. So I started seeing some other people with the LowRider S adding some things like the purple pegs and the levers and things like that. And purple is my favorite color, so I bought those. And then like it kept progressing and progressing. Yeah. So then I got the new air cleaner, and I got this powder coated to match the pegs. I put this exhaust on from Trask. I like this one a lot because I wanted a 2-into-1 system. Okay. But there's a lot of 2-into-1s on the market, and I particularly liked this one because it had kind of like the fake safety wire on it. Secret, the safety wire is like not actually doing anything, but it looks cool. It looks like it's racy, like it's doing something. So yeah, I bought it for that.
So why did you want a 2-into-1?
I personally just like the look of it and how it flows with the bike. With 2-into-1 systems, so stock, this bike has a 2-into-2, which means the two different exhaust pipes are staying separate all the way through the mufflers. And when you change it to a 2-into-1 system, of course, you're merging the exhaust flow. So that changes how the engine breathes a little bit. And, you know, a lot of the performance in that kind of comes out like in the tuning of the engine. It's not like you can just slap an exhaust on it and, you know, expect it to have like a ton more horsepower or something. But yeah, you're basically like changing the way the engine is breathing. And, you know, like certain exhausts will have baffles or like catalysts in them. And that also changes the way the air is flowing, which then changes how it sounds. So a lot of people will often put like an aftermarket exhaust on because they have a particular sound that they want their bike to be like. And, different companies kind of produce different sounds. And I guess I particularly liked this one, mainly, like I said, for the looks, but I also like the sound of it as well. So I loved my stock pipes, but I just wanted something that looked a little different.
So you're an engineer at Harley Davidson. Why did you pick this specific bike? Out of all the bikes you could have picked, I feel like you probably have more insights on this than a lot of people.
I guess my reasons were really personal. It wasn't necessarily for any certain technical reasons. I think everyone's motorcycle is a very personal choice. You want something that you feel comfortable on, something that is well suited for the type of riding that you primarily do. You want something that you like the looks of, right? So sort of like all of those things packaged together are why I ultimately chose this bike. When I first bought it, I was still living in Milwaukee and didn't have a garage. We just had like a narrow driveway. And especially like when I started to do more long distance riding, I knew I wanted something a little bit bigger, a little bit more capable of like carrying a lot of gear and something that was going to keep me comfortable for hundreds of miles at a time. But I didn't have the space for a touring bike in that small driveway. I would have had to do like a 50-point turn to get it out every time. And I was just not interested in doing that. So immediately I kind of like threw that idea out. And I had owned a few Softails before this one.
Okay.
I had a Sport Glide for 2 years before this, and I loved that bike, but personally, I did not love the forward controls on it. I'm more of a mid-control person. So once I knew this bike was coming out, I sat on it, test rode it, I loved it. I felt like it fit me like ergonomically, and I just felt like it had a personality that I kind of like bonded with. So I don't know, like very not engineering things. Like I said, it was like a really like personal choice, I guess.
Yeah. So what future plans do you have for this bike?
Well, it's a never-ending project, that's for sure, but I'm always tinkering. I think I want to powder coat my wheels to match the air cleaner frame here. So I want the purple on the wheels. I want to add a little bit more purple up top. So I'm thinking like the top clamp on my handlebar mount, maybe purple gas caps, really just kind of like updating.
Small pops of color,
like more of the cosmetics. I'm definitely going to get new saddlebags someday. I want to get a different seat. And yeah, just like little things here and there. I don't really plan on doing many like performance upgrades to the engine. It's fine for me for what I need. I know some people like always try and squeeze out as much horsepower as they possibly can.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I've got it tuned for my intake and my exhaust, and I like the feel of it the way it is. So I'm just going to leave it.
Okay. So we've talked about, what you do professionally. We've talked about how you've gotten involved in your motorcycle community. What advice do you have for new riders, new women riders, somebody who's, interested in motorcycles but not sure they want to take the next step? What advice do you have?
Just do it. That probably sounds so cliche, but honestly, I think people who aren't in the motorcycle scene or part of the community, maybe didn't grow up with it. From the outside, it can seem really intimidating, but I promise it's not. Motorcycles are for everybody. There's a place for everybody within this community. You just have to like find your people. So I think as someone who's like even considering learning how to ride, or maybe somebody who already has their license and they're new, just don't be afraid to kind of like put yourself out there and just and find your crew, because having that support system and those people you can rely on, that you like feel comfortable making mistakes around, or they're gonna like teach you things that you've never done before. Like how I mentioned in my first long distance road trip, those women taught me so many things about riding long distance that I didn't know before. Like finding those people is so valuable, and you're gonna make lifelong friends in the process. Like Motorcycle people are some of my favorite people. So yeah, just do it. And definitely, I really like to advise people to take a class. Some people just kind of learn from like their brother or their uncle or whatever, and like that's okay for a while. But please go take an actual professional class. You know, they're trained professionals. It's their job to teach you how to be safe on the road and how to look out for cars and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a really, really big advocate for riding training, and not just like the basic MSF class, but once you do that, you're riding for a couple of years, consider going and taking like an advanced class or something along those lines, because there's always something to learn and you're going to be a better and a safer rider for it. And then gear. I'm also a really, really big advocate for gear. So that's another piece of advice I like to give new riders is invest in your gear. And the cool thing is, like, especially as women riders, there are so many options for us on the market now. I mean, not as much as men yet. But I think like we're kind of fortunate as female riders right now in this point in time that there are more options for us than there ever have been before. You know, there are companies that are actually owned and led by female riders, and they're designing gear for us. So it's definitely out there, or even, you know, not just females, but, you know, men as well. There's so many cool gear options that, like, you know, things that don't even look like motorcycle jackets, but they still have the protection, right? So that's a really, really big piece of advice I like to give people, you know. And I know some people, like, they have their opinions about gear, and that's fine. Like, everyone's an adult, you can make your own choice. But my theory is, like, if I can do something small to ensure that I'm going to continue riding for many, many years throughout my life, I'm going to do it. So, yeah, I think it's, like, worthwhile to invest in that stuff.
Good advice. I need to do a second rider's course, I think. I did, you know, my first one to get your license, but
yeah,
I should do another one.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think in the advanced MSF class, they often focus on like slow speed maneuvering. I never did the advanced MSF one because for work, for my job every year, like for my job in particular, I have to pass basically like an advanced MSF equivalent class annually. Like we get tested on it, just to ensure that, like, you know, we're competent and safe riders, because I do ride a lot of company bikes and a lot of like prototype bikes. And in that class, we do a lot of slow speed maneuvering. And I think some people look at that and they're like, why is that going to be useful to me? You know, like I'm usually doing 65 down the highway or faster, whatever, you know. But think about all the times that you're in the city, or you're parking, or you're coming to a stop, or like you have to do a U-turn in the middle of a road because you're going the wrong way. So just like having those skills and that confidence is super, super valuable.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions for you, wants advice, just wants to follow your page because you have really cool stuff, how can they get in contact with you and find you?
I'm pretty active on Instagram, so my handle is Nerissa_nonstop, because I'm always on the go. I never stop. So that's probably the best place to find me.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks for checking out the videos today. Don't forget to go to our website. We've got some merch out there. We've got some hats, t-shirts. We will put Nerissa's information in the description, and stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for checking out the video today. We will put Nerissa's details. Never mind. All right. Well, because I was going to say we're going to yeet Nerissa's details into the... You could. At the beginning, you could just be like, sup.
Sup. Welcome to my house.
Today's episode is brought to you by the word yeet.
And all of a sudden you have this like Sesame Street style, like,
that's what
you know?
I'm going for, yeah. The color blue. Today's number is 3.
Yeet.
Okay. I know. All right. So I was gonna be like, hey, 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 hey. Oh, I'm a loser. Okay.
I mean, that's technically what it is, kind of,
Fine.
right?
Yeah, no, it is. It's 100%.
Her tag or her handle.
Right.
There you go. We're old. Her MySpace link.
Yes. Your MySpace would have had a theme song.
Oh, I would change it like weekly.
Yeah.
I could never pick one.
All right.